Oh, great. Last week we had to go to the desert. This week we have to go up a mountain by ourselves. Now you might be like Peter. You might say, Lord, it is good that we are here. You'd love to get out of the city for the weekend, go to the desert, or go up the mountains, or go to the ocean. But sometimes it's too much. Sometimes taking that time away with God, that time with ourselves, is just too much, too painful. As a gay person, I've spent a lot of time being a part of the city, away from the city, being separate. Sometimes I just want to be normal. I want to be experiencing things just like everybody else, rather than having to experience these other special experiences. And sometimes the pain is so overwhelming that we choose to be distracted. We choose to distract ourselves with our gadgets or our social media. We choose to escape our own world. For me, I chose to drink a lot. Other people choose to do a lot of drugs. People choose to go on their phone apps and look for the next hookup, or to have a lot of sex, or to eat a lot. We have a lot of distractions, even meetings, pouring ourselves into our work rather than taking the time to go up the mountaintop. And why? Well, when we look at what happens up the mountaintop, the disciples are supposed to have this glorious experience. Jesus is transfigured before them. And are they celebrating? No, they're not celebrating. The disciples are very afraid. They fall to the ground afraid. When I think about the experience that LGBT people have called coming out of the closet, it's supposed to be a glorious experience of really coming to know and accept and love oneself. But it's not usually completely that. Even if there's a glorious experience, there is often a lot of pain associated with it. As a Catholic coming out, we have the church transfigured right before us. We have to look at the church in a different light. We end up looking at our families in a different light, especially when we realize that family we thought unconditionally loved us actually loves us only with some limitation. And that's a painful experience to accept. It's painful to experience the feeling of being abandoned by the church, by our families, feeling abandoned by our own gods. So when we go up the mountain, we can feel that feeling of being alone, being by ourselves. And it can be very painful, and we can go into despair, especially if we employ one of these distractions. But surely the scriptures has something to offer us, some kind of hope. When we look at this exchange in Matthew, we look at Jesus being led by the Spirit into the desert. And Jesus leads the disciples up the mountaintop. There's this notion of being led. So even if there's a difficult experience that we're having, or even if there's some pain that we need to be felt, can we truly believe that God is leading us, that God is at work even in the middle of all this pain? So in Matthew, what is it that God is saying? God says about Jesus, "This is my beloved Son." God doesn't say, "This is Judge Jesus, so listen to him." No, God says, "I love Jesus, so why don't you listen to him?" And what does Jesus have to say to us? Jesus doesn't say, "Be this way." Jesus says, "Be not afraid." This is my beloved Son. Be not afraid. God is about love. God is about freedom from fear. So we need not numb ourselves. So maybe you are like Peter, and maybe it is good for you to be here. Or maybe you are like me, and maybe it's a challenging experience to feel alone, to feel the pain of abandonment, to feel disillusioned by different awarenesses about our church or our families. If so, I hope that we can all find faith and believe that God is at work even in the middle of our mess. May we boldly go up the mountain, that we may not numb ourselves, but that we may hear God's voice, saying, "Be not afraid, for you and I are God's beloved sons and daughters." Amen.